the book I'm going to talk about is a book I got 14 years ago. It came out in 2011 and I met the author when I was 11. And she signed it. I have a signed copy because I met her when I was 11 and I was in primary school. Because my school used to try and arrange us kids to meet authors so that we might, want to be an author or want to ask questions about their dreams and about how they create these books. So I've met a couple of authors of children's books and teenage books. I met Ian Beck, who did Tom True Heart series. I've met Geraldine McCaughrean, who I know did the Peter Pan and Scarlet, which I still haven't read, but I met her. Did I get it signed? I can't remember. And I've met Sita Brahmachari. I'm really sorry if I butchered that name. So this is Artichoke Hearts. To prove I have it signed, I will show you the signature. Here it is. And I remember this. I remember meeting her, and I remember really enjoying listening to her talk. And this is when this book had just come out. And I've tried to read it over the last 14 years, and I just never finished it. I'd get a third of the way in or halfway in, and I even tried to read it in uni, and I just didn't. And I finally read it. I read it in a day, or just over a day. It's 320 pages. I'm pretty proud of myself for reading it in 30 hours. I was very impressed with myself. Good job. Not that I should rush a book, but I have other books I want to read, and I'm just I want to read as many as I can while I'm here. Anyway, not the point. Read this book, and I remember reading it when I was young, trying to read it when I was younger, and getting I don't know, maybe 60 pages in, 70 pages in. And I know that it's about the loss of a grandmother and preparing for that. And the thing is, this book touches so many deep topics. And I think for a teenager, this is what the book is, who the book is designed for, is teenagers. Because it talks about growing up from being a child and now being a teenager and wanting more independence from your parents. And for girls, it talks about the first time you get a period and what that's like. And the stigma and the embarrassment of getting your first period and always checking if you've bled through, and the nervousness you feel the first time you get it. And it talks about when you become a teenager, you're more open to the world and you see and learn more about the world than you did as a child. And it talks about the Rwandan genocide because one of the classmates was an orphan from that and is adopted by one of the teachers. So it talks about, deep and dark topics, and talks about as you grow up, you keep secrets from your family and from those you trusted and from those you cared for and even your friends. And as you grow up, it talks about bullying as well. It talks about this girl being really shy, Mira, being really shy and being unconfident and low self-esteem, especially with her voice. And she's a really good artist, and she goes to this writing club with her friend. I gotta find the name. I know, because it's Millie Lockhart, and she goes to her and she sees Millie Lockhart as a protector and a defender for a while. And then as they're growing up, she's getting more confident, and she has a crush on this boy called Jide, and how they eventually do start going out. And then there's Ben as well, who Millie flirts with a little bit. And it's a really pretty story of teenage years. And it goes through so many topics, and you see Mira grow up in the span of a month. You see her coming to terms with the fact that her grandmother is dying and does eventually die, and you see her come to terms with grief and loss and growing up, and you see her mature, and you get to see how big her grandmother's world was, Nana Josie's world was, and that she would go and protest, and that she was this artist, and she loved bird watching. She had this beautiful house in Suffolk, and you get to meet all of her friends as Nana Josie is dying. And she makes more friends when she's in the hospice. And the reason it's called Artichoke Hearts is because the grandmother has a charm that is an artichoke. And she explains why it's the artichoke. And I think it's one of the most beautiful explanations ever. And I want to read it to you. I want to find it. Let me just I know it's on my Instagram because I posted it on my Instagram. I was like, I need this in my on my Instagram story because it was such a gorgeous I don't know how to put it, such a gorgeous quote. Babies like Lila start off with tender, loving, trusting hearts, but gradually they learn to protect themselves. As the years go by, grow tougher and tougher layers. Look at this. The outside layers of an artichoke are so tough they're not even worth eating, but they get more and more tender as you come closer to the heart. These tough outer layers stop you feeling so much, so people walk around with hard little hearts that no one can touch. And I think this analogy is beautiful because this book really kind of makes you think, and it really kind of makes you think about every connected part of the story and how everything connects in. And I love also the design on the outside. And when you read the book, you kind of realise where each of the designs come from. Like, there's a key in the top corner, and Millie Lockhart has a story that her ancestor was the one protecting her heart. And there's these butterflies. When Mira gets a new chain for her artichoke charm, because the bracelet breaks on Mira's birthday when she's gifted it, she gets a new charm, and it has a bird and a butterfly on it. And the grandmother loves birds and butterflies in the garden. So there's lots of birds on the cover, lots of butterflies on the cover. And obviously it's London, so they've got the London skyline here. And then I'm assuming this is Mira and Jide. And there's like different flowers on there. There's a dolphin, because when the grandmother is dying, she orders what's called an eco-friendly coffin, because it's an eco-friendly burial. And she orders a plain white coffin, and the guy is called Moses, and she orders this plain white coffin, and Moses brings the coffin, and the grandmother is gonna paint it. And so her and Mira paint it together, and they paint this and Mira has all these dreams throughout, and she dreams of the sea and these dolphins and these birds, and again the birds come into play, and she dreams that they're swimming with the dolphins, the grandmother's swimming with the dolphins, and then she flies away with the birds. And so they paint dolphins and the waves on this beautiful casket, on this beautiful coffin. Mira has to come to terms with her painting her grandmother's coffin. And they put like a little tiny dog on the corner that's like peeing in the ocean, because why not? But because the grandmother has a dog called Piper, and they paint the dog peeing into the sea as a little joke. And they get the paints from someone called Dusty Dan, who has all of the paints that grandmother always uses. And you see like the last goodbye between the paint seller and the fantastic, it didn't dry my hair properly. But between Dusty Dan and the grandmother, you see the final goodbye, and you see the final goodbye when it's when the person that runs the bird sanctuary and the guy that she protested with for so long, and kind of all these friends. And it's such a beautiful book in helping people through grief, I think, or helping people through trauma, but even just giving teenagers, this is definitely a book for teenagers, but I read it and I'm not a teenager anymore, but it's definitely a good book for teenagers, especially teenage girls, I think, because it just goes through things you will experience in secondary school, so from kind of the age of 11 and up, your first period and friends and bullying and, your first love, your first crush, all of these kind of things. So I think it's really, really beautiful. I lost my grandmother just before I went to Korea, and I always tried to read this in preparation for losing her because I was so close with her. And I think I'm glad I read it after my grandmother passed away, because it's helped me kind of come to terms with it, because it talks about necessary heartbreaks and how in life you have to have these necessary heartbreaks to change and to become a better person and become a new person. And it is that one of those layers of the artichoke leaves. So it's definitely a really beautiful book about this acceptance of grief and this acceptance of loss and of growing up. So definitely worth a read, whether you're a teenager or whether you're not. Because actually, I mean, I was given it at 11, so I was a preteen. I mean, it does talk about Rwandan genocide and gets a bit, not graphic, but it does talk about some details. So maybe as a preteen and a teenager, it's okay. But anything younger, maybe not. And definitely as you get older, because I think even as someone that is not a teenager, is in her 20s, it was nice for me too. So definitely recommend. And thank you, Sita, for this book, and thank you for inspiring an 11-year-old to hopefully one day write her own book and to continue dreaming and continue to grow up. So thank you. And yeah, I mean, please recommend me books, maybe a book like that, or maybe a book that's completely different. Enjoy what you're reading, and I hope to talk to you soon.